Welcome to the Manhood Broadcast podcast. This is Bob Mann, your host, provider, protector, procreator, promise keeper. We want to be great men. We want to be great fathers to our children. Today I have a wonderful guest with us, a man who is an excellent father to his own children, to many other men and women who look up to him as a father, who is the pastor of an unbelievable church that I've grown up in. I've been under his ministry for the last 40 years. He has taught me how to read and study the Bible, how to bring that book to life and use it as a guideline for how I live my life, understanding what righteousness is, what holiness is. These are concepts that were foreign to me as a young man and as a teenager. He explained them, he lived them out, and he lives them out in his life even now. 41 years of ministry at the Cathedral International. I have Bishop Donald Hilliard Jr. with me, Reverend Dr. Donald Hilliard Jr. with me. I am honored that he would take the time out of his busy schedule to be with me today. I'm going to have him come in and introduce himself and talk about right into fatherhood, his relationship with his father growing up. Thank you, Bishop Hilliard.
Thank you so much, Bob. It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Tell us about your relationship with your father.
My father was a consistent, caring, committed father that I loved, but around the age of 7, it seems to have become like a disconnect between him and me. I remember, my father also, in addition to working as a postal worker, he had a contracting and painting business.
Okay.
And at one time in his life, he and his brothers had Hilliard Brothers painting and contracting.
Okay.
And I remember, he was teaching me to paint. And I remember we were painting the house next door, and he was, telling me how to, do upstrokes,
Right.
cross strokes, and he was a little too harsh.
Okay.
And around that age is when I picked up that there was a disconnect between my emotional attachment with him.
Okay.
He was harsh, and when I was 2, 3, 4, 5. My mother says I always wanted to be, if he put on his coat, I was putting on my coat.
Okay.
I was going out that door with him.
Yeah.
But when I became more aware of the intensity of his structure, and it didn't, it affected me in an interesting way.
Okay.
And so my emotional attachment from that moment on, emotionally, I was a mama's child, very much so, and that would last my entire life.
Yes, I'm aware.
So my emotional attachment was stronger with her, but I loved him.
Right.
And he was a good man, a good provider, but he couldn't give what he never had, but he tried.
Right. Do you know what his relationship was with his father?
Terrible.
Okay.
My father's father was abusive, emotionally abusive, and physically abusive.
Okay.
So if my father was one of 13 children, and he was the 4th from the youngest child.
Okay.
There were 15 of them, but 2 children, but he never knew. Earlier in the children, they died in childhood. But my father was the 4th from the youngest, and he was the oldest in the house when his mother died. He was 21 when his mother died at 52. But I was told that my father told me he put too much coal in the furnace.
Yeah.
And he came upstairs from the basement, and his father knocked him downstairs,
Ooh.
across his face, and knocked him down the stairs.
Okay.
So his esteem from his father was very challenged.
Okay.
And I would see that throughout his
Right.
life.
Right. So kind of something he picked up from his father, he brought it into fathering you.
As much as it was very much as different as he was from his father. My father hugged me every day.
Okay.
I kissed him on the forehead every night till I was like 14 years old. Before I went to bed, night kiss.
Yeah.
he taught me how to speak.
Okay.
My first public speaking contest, my father wrote that speech or helped me fine
Okay.
tune that speech.
Okay.
Running for the student council president at junior high school,
Mm-hmm.
my father uh, helped me write that speech.
Right.
The Kentucky Derby or the
Mm-hmm.
whatever that Cub Scout thing is where you make the Derby.
Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yeah. The Derby
the
races where you
Derby
make the
race.
little cars.
My
Yeah.
father, I remember
Yeah.
him making the cars
Mm-hmm.
with me, and so there was many attempts,
Mm-hmm.
and he was good there.
Okay.
He was home
Mm-hmm.
consistently every night. Very, very hard worker, and that's
Mm-hmm.
probably both my parents were hardworking
Right.
people, and I got a very strong work ethic. I think I got that workaholism though from him.
Yes.
I certainly got my leadership from him.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was quiet,
Okay.
shy,
Mm-hmm.
more of a inner person.
Mm-hmm.
My father was very talkative,
Mm-hmm.
type A to the third
Okay.
power,
All right.
a born leader.
You get that.
Yep, I
Yes.
get that from him, as were most of his family.
Okay.
If you look at their obituaries as they
Mhm.
began to pass, my aunts and uncles, all of them did something unique. The first
Mm.
city councilman, it was black.
Okay.
The first tax assessor in Teaneck, it was black.
Okay.
The first black woman to own a yacht
Mhm.
in Teaneck, my
Yeah.
aunt. So
Okay.
all of them had that first
Right.
thing,
Right.
and it was all in their gene pools. And you could even see it from me down to
Mhm.
Destiny.
Yeah.
You can see
Oh.
that leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting. I see it in her
Mhm.
children.
Yeah.
So my father was a good man,
Mm.
which I spoke at his
Yeah.
funeral, and then when I passed his body
Mhm.
for the last time, all I could say was thank you,
Yeah.
because I had what so many didn't have.
Right.
He did the very best he could.
Right.
I feel he was too more harsh
Mhm.
than he needed to be,
Okay.
and he would recognize that as I came into adulthood,
Okay.
that he was.
Okay. Was there any type of reconciliation where you all talked about that, or you never got to that
Yeah,
space?
we did. He never said he was sorry directly,
Mm-hmm.
but indirectly.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
so and when
Mm-hmm.
he got saved,
Yeah.
he tried to get into that space,
Okay.
but it was really too late.
Yeah.
He tried to, even my
Mm-hmm.
bachelor party, he
Yeah.
was there,
Okay.
which was awkward for me. So I just felt, the awkwardness of. My mother would talk about having dinner. We would have dinner as a
Mm-hmm.
family, and she would like try to nudge me over,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to look at him,
Mm-hmm.
because I would look away from him, because the
Mm.
emotional
Yeah.
fathers must
Yeah.
make that emotional connection
Yeah.
with their children. If
Mm-hmm.
they don't make that
Yeah.
emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
another example, my mother,
Mm-hmm.
my father, we're in the car, a Dodge car,
Mm-hmm.
remember, green, and I was he was smoking a cigarette,
Uh-huh.
and I was getting nauseous,
Okay.
and I said my stomach's hurting, and so my mother said, Donald, his name was Donald,
Mm-hmm.
you should put that cigarette out because it's making Donnie
Right.
nauseous. And my father said he gonna have to learn that you got to go through some things in life and just get used to it, and
Mm.
everybody's not gonna change because he's not. And he
Mm-hmm.
yelled. I will never forget that when he yelled,
Yeah.
it was too much.
Okay.
And so I'm sitting in the back seat behind my mother.
Mm-hmm.
I leaned up on the seat
Right.
and had my head against the back of her seat,
Mm-hmm.
and I put my hand through the little crack between the door and the chair,
Right.
the door in the car seat,
Right.
and she put her hand back, and it touches me even now.
Okay.
And she
Okay.
connected
Right.
she knew I was hurt,
Yeah.
and that kind of bond
Mm.
would be one that would last her
Right.
entire life.
Right. There's something about uh, men, fathers, and their male child
Hmm.
that there's always this rub. When children get to be teenagers, they think they know everything
Right.
and don't follow their parents.
Right.
But there's something between the father and that male child that is very fragile.
Hmm.
And if you don't take care of it, I think as a father reaching out to the child, it grows and festers
Hmm.
into something much larger
Hmm.
later on. And it's a shame that it has to be that way, but it does have to be that way. And I think I know with my sons, I try to um, make sure that they're always encouraged and take my ego out of the way and push them forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always hard to do. I think, especially for an older generation, was always difficult to do. Um, and it sounds like you inherited a lot of things. I talk about being a procreator from your father
Mm-hmm.
as a father. Now, moving into you being a father,
Mm-hmm.
having, three beautiful daughters, did any of those things that your father did carry over into your philosophy and your practice of fathering?
I want to also say first, before I forget, but yet a boy cannot learn how to be a man
Mm-hmm.
from his mother.
Mm.
A boy, I believe,
Yeah.
learns how to be a man from his father.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't have a father there, it's got to
Mm-hmm.
be his pastor,
Yeah.
his priest,
Mm-hmm.
his rabbi,
Right.
his coach,
Right.
his Boy Scout troop leader.
Mm-hmm.
But there's got to be, and regrettably, so often we see these young boys imitating bad fathering,
Mm-hmm.
and then they end up also,
Yeah.
doing the father piece like their fathers did it, and it was
Right.
very bad.
Right. Right.
Um, you know.
I had an amazing interview with your son-in-law,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how big and
Mm-hmm.
intimidating he looks.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that he was not aggressive because he did not have his father
Mm-hmm.
in the household as he began to be a teenager. And that came later on
Mm-hmm.
in his life. So, exactly what you're saying, and perfect example close to home, he did not know how to handle himself as a man.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you have to be aggressive at times, but you also have to be, compassionate and understanding
Mm-hmm.
at other times. And listen, I had a great interview with him.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very thoughtful, very caring, great father, deep, deep thinker. I did
Very.
not know that until we sat down and
Mm-hmm.
actually had a talk. So you make a great point there. But what is it that rolled over from your father into your relationship with your children?
I believe that the consistency,
Mm-hmm.
like I never ever thought of leaving
Mm.
my family.
Okay.
Um, and I can say this with great pride. That seems to be a trait in my father's brother. He's had six brothers,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, there's two divorces, but they were still connected.
Okay.
One father uncle got divorced after his fourth son grew up and
Mm-hmm.
graduated high school,
Mm-hmm.
and then they ended the marriage.
Ah,
You
okay.
know what I'm saying? It
Right.
wasn't so. I don't know of
Right.
this whole no father in the home, no father sitting
Yeah.
at the head of the table
Yeah.
for dinner, no
Mm-hmm.
father at Christmas.
Yeah.
That's something that we just don't know among our cousins,
Right.
and I'm grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that carried over.
Okay.
That being consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was loving.
Yeah.
His nieces and nephews
Mm-hmm.
adored him.
Yeah.
He would always buy popsicles, make sure there were popsicles in the freezer,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother would always make sure there was Entenmann's coffee cake,
Okay.
always on the counter or on top of the refrigerator.
Uh-huh.
So when people came by for coffee, and there would always be cake. So those things I remember.
Okay.
But he was always present, and I always tried to be very present for my children.
Okay.
Having girls, being a girl dad, as you know, you've got two of each.
Yes.
It just sucks you into a whole nother.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, they run you.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
you're
yeah.
having a girl, being a girl dad, they're in charge. I think back now on Destiny at 3.
Mm-hmm.
I'm standing up here, she's down here, and she's telling me off at 3.
Yeah.
She's letting me know how she felt about something at 3. And
Has that changed at all?
No.
No.
No. I mean, she will let you know, and then she'll grab her cell phone and go to Google.
Right.
See, I knew I was right. I was right. I knew it. I was right. And that's a Hilliard trait. She gonna make sure that she
Yeah.
that she knows.
Mm-hmm.
That she's got a wonderful husband, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
I thank you for
Wonderful. And she is just a great, great woman. Knowing her from, a child and a
Mhm.
teenager
Birth.
and being around,
Mhm.
and she's just been consistently there
Mhm.
for my daughters.
Thank God. Yes.
Okay. They can call her up in a heartbeat
Mhm.
and she's there. I think we had a graduation party for my daughter on Father's Day.
Mhm.
And here comes Destiny. She had just had the baby not long before that.
A month before.
And showing up for that. And she's just always there for them. They can pick up the phone and call her, and Destiny's right there.
Yeah.
She's just an awesome, awesome woman. Let me ask you this. Your first child,
Mhm.
you planned it, you knew at age so and so, this is when I want to have a child.
Not at all. We got married in September of 1981, and Leah was born in September of 1982.
Okay.
We were married September 12th. Leah was born September 26th the following year.
Okay.
So within that first 3 months,
Yeah.
we conceived.
Okay.
And I was ecstatic.
Yeah.
Phyllis was traumatized, because she was
Okay.
like, we had a plan. We had a 5-year plan.
Okay.
But in the wisdom of God, we thank God for it, because my father would have never lived to see his grandchildren, because my father would die. I got married in 81. Leah was born in 82, and he died in 83.
Right.
So he was able to hold her, throw her up in the air. She was 1 when he
Right.
died. So, I'm grateful for that. But I had no idea that it would be that, that we would conceive. And we didn't have insurance at the time.
Ooh.
Because I was between jobs. I was in seminary, working at Bamberger's, being youth assistant pastor at First Baptist Church in Inglewood, being youth minister at St. John Baptist Church, and working at Bamberger's, and going to seminary full time.
Yeah.
So I've always had
Wow.
multiple hats. So when people say what they can't do, and I'm like, as you know,
They got the wrong one.
they got So, and I think for me, when I deal with the men of our church and stuff, which I thank God for that whole journey.
Yeah.
I kind of was maybe been a bit too pushy, but it was never for my own goal.
Right.
I always saw more for the people I pastor than sometimes they saw for themselves.
Yes.
And that sometimes would be a blessing. Wives would say, thank God for the men's ministry and bishop,
Right.
or the wives thought he was getting too mannish or too
Yes.
much of a leader.
Yes.
And she didn't want that. He hadn't been that before.
Right.
So now how come
Right.
he's that now?
Yeah.
And and I've seen, and sometimes that situation, it would.
There's a whole pathology with that, especially women who were, or just men or women who were raised by a mother, seeing her running the household. Many of those, let's take the man, for instance, he will marry a woman who is running everything. And then when he now starts to stand up and be the man, she has issues with that. Yeah. But I have to say that you're pushing, and I come from a household where we were always pushed. But when I look at the seeds, the generations that have come after, going back 40 years, looking at the children and then the grandchildren, they have all achieved much more than they would have if you had not pushed.
So I'm told.
Okay. There are doctors, there are lawyers, engineers, people, professional people in finance and all types of things that they probably would not be in if you had not pushed. Okay. And my daughters will tell me all the time that I know somebody everywhere because of the cathedral. Okay. They went to a function down in Baltimore, and I think Bow Wow was doing the function, and they had a DJ and everything there. And there was somebody there playing the drums. And I pulled up a picture of Justin Wright. I said, was it him? They were like, yeah. They were like,
Wow.
So, and there it is. So my father, myself, down to my kids, they have no idea who he is, but they were connected because of your ministry.
No, thank the Lord.
And I know we always talk about the cathedral and the wonderful things we've done in Perth Amboy with the buildings and everything. But I'm more impressed with what you've done as far as the people, the number who have houses, the number who have businesses, who've gone on for advanced degrees, and the work that they're doing because of the word that you preached and how hard you pushed. Amen. And I appreciate that, because it pushes my kids when I see the things that they're doing. How did that first child, expecting the first child, change you?
I think it hypered is not the right word grammatically, but I think it pushed into overdrive what was already there.
Okay.
I remember her first birthday party, or my niece's first birthday party. My niece was six months behind my daughter, and I was running around. I was buying the balloons. I was buying the cake. That was Leah's birthday party. I was buying, and my father said, don't take everything from the mother.
Yeah.
But that was just me. Making sure there was cake, making sure there was cups, making sure there was juice, and so that kind I hyper I think I was hyper dad, hyper father. I wanted to do this so well and so perfectionistically, and that's not the right word, but perfectionism in psychology they call it a disorder. That you can that perfectionistic
Right.
personality, and which I think I have some of that.
Yeah.
You know, I want to
You
be.
think?
Yeah, I think, I want to be the perfect pastor, the perfect husband, the perfect father, and there is none.
Right.
There is none.
Right. Right.
And so I think when I had Leah,
Mm-hmm.
I recognized that my wife and my daughter I was responsible for that.
Yeah.
And after we had Destiny, I remember we were in the house then in Piscataway, and I woke up in the middle of the night like, ooh, I felt anxious, and I looked. Destiny was in the bed in the middle of us because all of them were nurse children. So, Phyllis would nurse them and they would fall asleep in the bed. And I looked at her and I got up, went into Leah's room, got up, looked at her bed, looked at Charisma's bed, and looked at my wife. And I'm like, I'm responsible for all of this, whether they eat, whether they drink, whether they have clothes, whether they have a roof over their head. At the same time, my father passing at 53 when my mother was 50, although she was worked, she worked and she, had insurance and she had Social Security. But yet I felt that responsibility to cover my mother and my sister. So I was that.
You became the man of the house.
I became the man of the house of both houses.
Once your father was gone,
right,
taking care of your mother and your sister,
right.
And too often little boys are told you're the man of the house.
That's true.
When the father is not there, giving him way too much responsibility at a young age.
Right.
But you were early 30s at that point?
I was 26 when he died.
26 when he passed away. Okay, so I remember watching you managing two households and knowing the relationship between you and your mother. Your relationship with your mother is more like most women have with their mothers, that they talked constantly throughout the day.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And listen, it was a beautiful relationship that you all have and should be modeled, by other men having that type of relationship. Because I don't think we as men, we don't emote enough, we don't talk enough. Okay. And I think it's easier for us to talk to a woman, and in many cases, our mothers, than it is for us to talk to each other. And we need to talk to each other a whole lot more about what's going on. I'm always advocating, as fathers, instead of going to the barbershop talking about the game and politics and, women or whatever it may be, talk about being a father. Talk about the challenges that come in becoming a good father and doing a good father. What challenges did you run into that you had to overcome, or maybe something that you wish you had an opportunity to do over again as a father?
It bothers me that interesting. That's very interesting. I didn't hit my kids with regularity, but the one or two times that I did smack them, I regret.
Okay.
It's like everything else done, but the fact that I smacked Leah, and she reminds me that as she was disciplining my grandson, that my father, I remember him smacking because I was giving him back talk, and he had smacked me, and my glasses fell off my face, and I can't stand to hear it. I'm like, my God, because I don't. That's not who I am.
Right.
And so there would be other times. I remember we're having dinner, and I said to her, "If you don't behave, I'm gonna knock the hell out of you." And she said, "And you call yourself a pastor?"
God.
And that just crushed me. So I went to my elders and said, "I want to let y'all know this now, in case Leah writes a letter." And I said hell to my daughter. And Elder Rogers, may he rest in peace, he said, "Oh, hell, Pastor." I was pastor then. He said, "Oh, hell, Pastor, you're going to say a whole lot more before they get grown." And he was right.
He was right.
He was right. And, so I couldn't be that perfect. And that's not normal. Because you're not going to be perfect. I wish they had never seen my wife and I argue. But then again, my wife and I come from two completely different,
Right.
completely different
Right.
backgrounds, and that's marriage.
Yeah.
You have to kind of marriage is getting along and deciding you're gonna make marriage work in spite of the uniqueness of
Yeah.
the relationship or
Yeah.
what time of day it
Yeah.
was. Your love is everlasting,
Right.
and your
Right.
love overcomes whatever challenges you might deal
Right,
with.
right. Lisa and I would say we get in an argument, and there were times we didn't speak for an entire week.
Mhm.
And we worked on the same job.
Mhm.
Okay. She would answer the phone would be for me. She would just put the phone on hold, wouldn't even tell me it was for me.
Ooh.
My mother had to tell me that the phone was for me. But we would say to each other, we're in this thing till death do us part.
Right.
I'm not ready to die. You're not ready to die. Let's work it out.
Right.
Okay. And there were times when it would have been easy to walk away.
Yes.
But we had made that commitment that we were going to stay together. You said so much with my daughters. I've never hit them. I never put hands on them. That was important to me. But I was older when I had, I think, 37, maybe when 35 or 37 when Jada was born. So I had much more self-control than when I was younger.
Yes.
But there was one time when Jada was graduating from high school. They had that senior week, and she wanted to go to Florida, and I did not want her to go. Wanted her to wait until Monday to leave, and she wanted to leave that Saturday. And she came downstairs. She looked me in my face. She said, "I'm leaving, and what are you going to do about it?" That was the one day. And there have been many days I wish Lisa was still alive, but I wish Lisa was alive for that day because she knew I would not put my hands on her.
And Lisa would have tore her up.
Oh my God. She wouldn't have said it if Lisa were there.
Right.
Right. She would not have had the courage to come downstairs and look Lisa in the face and say that. But because she knew, she took advantage of that. And she and I have talked about it to this day. And she says, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. She says she should not have done that, and it works out. So I do understand about putting the hands on
because I didn't put my hands on my kids, my wife sure enough did.
Yeah.
She handled that
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
Now, can we take a break right now, Bob?
Yeah. Okay. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties, and after our break, I'm not able to bring you the last 7 minutes of the interview with Bishop Hilliard, but I'd like to try and just summarize what we talked about. Bishop Hilliard said in the beginning of the interview, there is no such thing as a perfect dad. He was trying to be a perfect dad. He gave advice to fathers, and the advice kind of goes like this, and I'm paraphrasing. Be consistent with your children. Routines are better than huge highs followed by terrible, terrible lows. Be consistent with your children. Remember, you are in it for the long haul. Whatever situation you're going through with your child right now, with your child's mother, is temporary. Their life will ebb and flow. They will not be 5, 7, 10 forever. It's 365 days and you move on to the next phase. So whatever they're going through, be there for them consistently. Even if they don't want you there, be there for them. Teach them to communicate their feelings, their thoughts, their aspirations, their visions. Teach them to speak their mind. Give them that space to do that very thing. And foster their growth, their spiritual growth, their emotional growth, their educational growth, whatever you can do to build them up and make them stronger. This is advice we talked about in general with Bishop Hilliard, and he talked about some really great things. And I want to thank him for taking the time out to be part of the podcast. I would ask you, please subscribe to the Manhood Podcast on YouTube. Follow us wherever you get your podcast from. I believe you will get some great information. Like I said, we are providers, protectors, procreators, promise keepers. The Manhood Podcast. Thank you for listening.